I call on Government Order of the Day number 9.
Te Awa Tupua Whanganui River Claims Settlement Bill, second reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Christopher Finlayson.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Te Awa Tupua Whanganui River Claims Settlement Bill be now read a second time. The bill gives effect to a deed of settlement between the Crown and Whanganui iwi, which was concluded in August 2014 up the river not far from Jerusalem. The deed of settlement has two parts. First, Ruruku Whakatupua, Te Mana o Te Awa Tupua, establishes a new legal framework. Te Pā Aroa nā Te Awa Tupua for the Whanganui River that is centred on the legal recognition of Te Awa Tupua as an indivisible and living whole comprising the Whanganui River from the mountains to the sea, incorporating all its physical and metaphysical elements. Secondly, Ruruku Whakatupua, Te Mana o Te Iwi o Whanganui, addresses that very special, indeed intimate relationship between Whanganui iwi and the Whanganui River. It contains an iwi narrative, an agreed historical account, Crown acknowledgements and an apology, and cultural and financial redress for Whanganui iwi. Can I acknowledge the work of the Whanganui iwi negotiators, some who are in the gallery today? Can I especially acknowledge my negotiator, John Wood, our former ambassador in Washington on 2 occasions, and more recently well known for his work for me, both in relation to this claim and also Ngāi Tūhoe, and of course he's now resident in Kaikoura and has had to deal with all those issues. He's a wonderful New Zealander, and I acknowledge him. I acknowledge the government and other agencies who have contributed to this bill. One person I particularly want to mention on my side is Dr. Briar Gordon from the Parliamentary Council Office, who led the drafting on this very complex and innovative bill, and I acknowledge my friends nodding in the gallery. She would contact me from time to time and say, well, how do I express in legislation these metaphysical elements? But she got there with the help of Jamie Ferguson, Counsel for Whanganui iwi, so I acknowledge the tremendous work on both sides that was done to achieve the drafting, but I particularly acknowledge Briar Gordon. I also thank the Chair and the members of the committee. Mr Kurako and his team have once again done an excellent job in progressing this bill in a timely manner. Given the, shall we say, the interesting circumstances of the last few days, there are 2 other people I specifically wish to acknowledge. At the conclusion of the last debate, there were some very generous comments about me, but I have to say, in my 8 years as Minister for Treaty Negotiations, there are 2 other people who are responsible for progressing these claims, and without them, I would be nothing. And they are the Prime Minister of this country, who has been so tremendously supportive of me in this work. I can think of critical moments, both in relation to this negotiation and, for example, the Tūhoe negotiation, when, because we were dealing with very innovative redress, both could have gone off the rails, both could have failed. They did not fail because of the Prime Minister. And there are some people, including former leaders of my party, who have said that he didn't make a contribution. Well, I have to say it's only because they don't understand this stuff and never would. They live in a world that never was and never could be. But John Key is going to go down in history for a number of reasons, but he's going to go down in history for being a Prime Minister who was tremendously supportive to his Minister for Treaty Negotiations, who enabled this important work to be done. And the second person who deserves very special accolades is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. So often I've had to do my Oliver Twist act with him. Please, sir, I want some more. And he looks at me and says, what is it about you that causes me to have to spend so much money? But he's always there because he understands, even though he only went to St Patrick's College, Silverstream, he understands, as opposed to those of us like Mr Swain and I who went to a slightly better school, St Patrick's College, Wellington, he understands what social justice is all about. He understands the need to conclude these settlements. He's a great New Zealander, and I mihi to both of them. It's been a pleasure to serve with them. And this has a sort of a valedictory tone to it. Well, I can assure you that, like Mrs Thatcher, until the tomahawk goes in, I intend to go on and on and on. Mr Speaker, the bill was referred to the committee on 2 May 2016. 21 submissions were received from interested individuals and groups. The committee heard 11 of these hearings at Whanganui and Wellington during August and September 2016. The committee reported back to the House on 25 November of last year and recommended that the bill be passed with changes to the definition of Whanganui iwi and to the Crown nomination process for Te Pou Tupua, the River Guardians. The bill's definition of Whanganui iwi references a list of those hapu who were active in the 1950 Royal Commission of Inquiry into the bed of the Whanganui River. The definition is intended to define the groups that fall within the meaning of the term Whanganui iwi for the purposes of this Act, primarily being the settlement of Whanganui River claims. Importantly, it doesn't define those groups for any other purpose. Submissions by Uanuku Charitable Trust on behalf of Ngāti Uanuku and Ngāti Tamahaki and Te Iwi o Te Ngāta Haua Charitable Trust requested that the bill reflect their status as iwi. To avoid future confusion, the committee recommended clarifying the explanatory note in Schedule 1 to emphasise that the groups listed, which do include Ngāti Uanuku and Ngāti Haua, may also consider themselves to be iwi. The amendment also includes Ngāti Tamahaki as an example of a group affiliated with Whanganui iwi, even though it's not expressly identified in the 1950 list. I'm pleased with the outcome proposed by the committee, as it should provide a level of comfort to these groups regarding their status under the bill. During the consultation on this bill, the committee was made aware of an oversight in the Te Pou Tupua appointment process. As the role of Minister for Treaty of Waitangi negotiations will not exist indefinitely, the committee recommended amending Clause 21B to provide that the Minister for Treaty Negotiations is only responsible for the first Crown nomination to Te Pou Tupua. The committee has recommended that the Minister for the Environment should be responsible for future nominations. The committee's also recommended that both the Minister for Treaty of Waitangi negotiations and the Minister for the Environment should consult with the Minister for Māori Development, the Minister for Conservation, and any other relevant ministers when making the Crown nomination. This proposal recognises the importance of this appointment process within the Crown. Indeed, Te Pou Tupua can be seen as symbolic of the relationship between iwi and the Crown, which was envisaged by the treaty. Mr Speaker, I'm satisfied with these recommendations as they provide Whanganui iwi and the Crown surety for the future appointments of Te Pou Tupua. And although the Office of the Minister of Treaty of Waitangi negotiations is gradually being done out of a job, I'm very pleased that I will still lead the first Te Pou Tupua nomination for the Crown. Te Pou Tupua is a central element to the settlement, and I will work to ensure the appointments are made by settlement date. So, Mr Speaker, this second reading brings us closer to the concluding stages of settling the historical claims of Whanganui iwi to the Great River, and I'm so excited that this novel and innovative redress will soon become the law of our land. And my concluding remarks to my friends from the various Whanganui iwi is there's still some work to be done. There's still some unfinished business. I see my friend Mr. Mayor up there, that we need to get on with those land claims, and he's been doing great work in encouraging folk to get stuck in, and hopefully 2017 will see some real advances in that direction as well. So with those words, Mr. Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.